Hi future designers! I hope you all are doing great practice. So every year in any kind of entrance exam, NID, NIFT, be it Pearl or SWISHT or NATA exams, whatever, perspective drawing is one question that definitely will be there. They'll judge you on your knowledge, on the way you present it, and how better you understand the question and your presence of mind. All of this directly or indirectly through perspective drawing. See, there's one question and more than 50,000 people attempting the same question. So why do you think you will get selected? Only and only the sheets or the people who've attempted it which will delight the examiner, or which will stand out of the rest, or which will have something which is really appealing that examiner is bound to give them more marks, only those people will be the ones which will score highest and get those handful of seats which are available. Today I'm going to give you 10 tips to enhance your perspective drawings and make them stand out from the rest. Tip number 1 is make a thumbnail. A lot of students make this mistake. What they do is they read the question and they directly jump onto the answer sheet and start drawing whatever is coming to their mind. Even if you have a great idea and you're very sure, don't forget to make a small thumbnail in the beginning at the rough area provided at the backside of the question paper. In the thumbnail, just plan everything. Where are you going to place what and how you are going to utilize the answer sheet space. Because a slight difference in the starting point can end up making the whole drawing look totally different. Let me take the example of a horizon line. In these 3 boxes, I am taking horizon line at different levels of the sheet, and you will see how differently the end result comes up to be. If I place the horizon line above the center, I'll get more space where the ground is visible and no space to make the sky and the other parts visible. If that is the requirement of the question, you'll place the horizon line there. If I place it in the middle, you'll see how the balanced sky and the ground is visible. If you place the horizon line below the center, we have more space to show the buildings, the trees above, and less space for the ground. So depending on the requirement of the question, you have to plan it how you're going to start your composition and where you're going to place all the elements. Once you are very clear with the thumbnail, you don't need to add little details at this point. Just the rough idea of how the overall composition will look like. Once you are done with that, you are good to go. Tip number 2 is draw lightly. When you get onto the answer sheet and you start drawing whatever you have planned in the thumbnail, don't just start drawing with the normal pressure of the pencil. Draw it very lightly until you are done placing all the elements in the basic structure on your answer sheet. This is because if you are by mistaken drawn anything which is not right and you need to erase it, it's very difficult to get off those dark lines on the sheet. You might even spoil your paper, and you don't want to risk that, right? In the exam, it can be really risky. So make it a habit of drawing everything very light in the beginning of the composition. Even when you're practicing at home, just make it a habit that you always draw everything very light in the beginning. We'll darken these lines later when we reach on the detailing part. I know making detailings is very tempting part of the composition. So the moment we make one building, we feel like filling it up with all the little details and making it look beautiful. But you guys need to stop there. If you will get onto details, you'll miss on the overall composition and it will show in the end. So hold your temptation, do the basic layouting before you move on to the detailing part. I strongly recommend all the design aspirants to practice making freehand straight lines every day. Minimum 5 to 7 sheets you guys need to fill up in order to train your hand to make straight lines without using scale. This is the key to make clearer, neater and quicker drawings during the examination. You don't have so much time to make each line with the scale, especially in the perspective drawing. Using too much scale on the sheet will make the sheet look dirtier because the scale smudges the pencil everywhere it goes. Also, this will help you when you are going to do the final outline with the pen on the sheet, because pen ink also smudges with the scale. So in order to keep it neater, crisper and tidier, and also to save time, right now from today, start practicing making freehand straight lines. Let me know in the comment section below right now if you want me to make a separate video on how to practice making straight lines. Tip number 4 is play with textures. Have you ever wondered why some perspective drawings look so interesting and others look so boring and monotonous? This is because of the detailing part. If you place different textures, play around with different kind of windows and doors on the buildings, it makes your perspective drawings look very appealing. So now I'll tell you how to do that. You can create your own textures by playing around with lines. Start with simple vertical lines for one building and you can make horizontal lines for another building. You can make crisscross lines for another section and also can play with different brick textures like bigger or smaller brick textures for different buildings. You can play around with lines further to make different kind of patterns. Also some graffiti on some corners of the buildings look very interesting. You can make some graffiti with some brand names or the other things to make it look more appealing. Also with the windows, you can play around with different shapes of the windows. Like you can make square windows for one building and you can add some different kind of shades onto the windows for another building. You can save time and quickly just draw and color them alternatively. You can make some arcade windows with different shapes, small arcs, big domes, and you can add different detailings inside of those windows. Further on, you can make endless variations with the lines. You can color the alternate lines or make some space between the two dark lines. You can make some checkered patterns on the walls and so on. There is no limit with the coloring and the shading. You can create n number of new and different textures for the walls and the windows. Since I'm comfortable drawing freehand straight lines with the pen, I'm going to complete rest of the tutorial with the pen directly. Tip number 5 is break the monotony. A lot of students end up making typical perspective drawings like a converging point, buildings coming out of it on left and right and road in the middle. Try not to do that. Break that monotony by adding some overhead elements like electric pole coming from left to right. In this case, I'm making a hanging traffic light on the pole. You can add traffic signals, other kind of signs and symbols of the highway onto this pole. You can further add some electric pole wires going around from left to right. Just try to break the typical scene and add some elements which make it look more realistic, more lifelike and make it more appealing. Tip number 6 is additional elements. We see them everywhere on the road. We see a lot of name boards, brand boards, LED boards, flashing boards on the side of the buildings, hanging out boards, signals and signs and symbols on the highway and the traffic signs, all sort of such things, standees on the road at the side of the buildings. So add all of those elements to make the buildings look more interesting. Tip number 7 is people in perspective. Even the focus or the main subject of the composition is something else. If it's a road scene or a marketplace, you need to add people in the background because you see people everywhere. So now how to draw these people in these kind of perspective drawings? You don't need to draw the complete detail of the eyes, nose, head and then the costumes and the belt and the coat and everything. You just need to scribble the people around. Just take out the gesture of them. Just make round a circle for the head, just some scribbling for the main body part and the legs and the main gestures of the hand. That is enough for the people in perspective. Tip number 8 is scale and proportion. This is the most important tip for perspective drawing. Throughout the drawing, keep in mind the scale and proportion and the relativeness of the sizes of the people to the building, to the cars and everything around. If you're drawing such tall skyscraper buildings, so the people will be 1/7 or 1/8 of the height of the building. If you're drawing a man close to the car, so it will be what size and proportion will they take relatively as per the drawing. Keep that in mind. If the people are far, make them really small. If the people are close, make them really bigger. So this is very important. It will look very odd if you don't keep the proportions in mind and your man is looking as big as a bus and the whole composition will be totally wrong. Tip number 9 is add shadows. If you really want an edge over the other students and want to score more marks, always keep in mind to add shadows in the perspective. Shadows to the people, shadows of the buildings. Keep in mind what time of the day is specified in the question. According to that, where the sun will be. So, according to the sun's position, where the shadow will fall. This is very important in these kind of exams because they look into how students have evaluated the shadows and the placement of the sun to the scene. So don't forget to add shadows to the buildings, to the car, everything you have in the scene. Rectify on the go. Nobody is perfect. So we are bound to make some mistakes as we go on drawing with the perspective drawings or any other kind of drawings. But the most important thing is to rectify those mistakes. Whenever you make something, you draw a line and it goes unplanned and you cannot erase it, you're doing it directly with the marker or further at the last you're doing coloring, don't worry. Just try to confidently cover them up. Let me show you how I did some mistakes and then rectified them on the go. In the second last building you can see, first I made the straight lines, but the lines didn't go as neat and finished as I expected them to be. So just to neaten them up, I added a dark line on the edge. It didn't look very balanced, so I added some horizontal lines to the complete building. Further, to make it look even prettier, I added some dark lines at some distances on the building. It made it look complete and it hid well all the mistakes I did. Similarly, in the last building, I added a dark thick line in the edge because I could not make the last line straight enough. So this way, if you make any mistake, you should know how to confidently cover it up with more textures and add more elements to it so that it is not that noticeable. I hope these tips help you greatly with your practice and your final execution in your exams. These tips are useful not only in perspective drawing questions but almost in all kind of drawing questions. So there's no point of knowledge in our field if you don't implement that. So like each time we have come up with an assignment on perspective drawing in which you have to incorporate all the tips you have learned today. Attempt this question within a given timeline and share us your drawing sheets on their Design Ladder page on Facebook and Instagram. And I will thoroughly analyze it and try to give you a feedback as well. So here comes the assignment. This was a video of helping you enhance your perspective drawing, but if you want me to make a separate video on the basics of perspective drawing for a beginner, write it down in the comment section below so that I know that how many of you are really interested in learning that from me. Alright guys, prepare very well, all the best. I really wish that if you are passionate for this, you definitely get into your dream design college. Until then, take care, bye-bye.